I used to believe that if you worked hard enough, if you played by the rules, if you sacrificed the right pieces of yourself, life would eventually reward you. I had spent my whole adult existence chasing that belief like a religion, and for a long time I thought I was living proof of its truth. Every morning I'd wake in my downtown Chicago loft with the floor-to-ceiling windows spilling early sunlight across polished wood floors, the city buzzing faintly below like a heart that never stopped beating. I'd stretch, brew the same French press dark roast that had become a ritual, skim through the Wall Street Journal while half listening to Jason muttering in the shower, and then dress in tailored suits that made me feel less like a person and more like an institution. By the time I stepped into the lobby of Holter & Winslow, I wasn't just Claire, I was the chief financial officer, the woman whose signature determined futures, the one whose calculations could keep us afloat or sink us in an instant. And people knew it. They nodded with respect when I walked past. Assistants jumped to refill my coffee without me asking. Partners sought my approval like a benediction. It was intoxicating, and I'd be lying if I said I didn't love it. But under all that structure and order, my personal life was the place I thought I could be vulnerable. Jason was supposed to be the balance to my steel. He was charming, smooth in a way I could never be, and where I obsessed over spreadsheets and margins. He talked about dreams and big ideas. He made me laugh when my mind was knotted with numbers, made me feel soft when the rest of the world demanded I be sharp. We'd been together for 3 years, and even if we hadn't talked about marriage directly, I had let myself believe it was inevitable. We looked like the power couple everyone else wanted to be. Me with my finance empire, him with his real estate ventures. In photographs we seemed unstoppable, glossy, enviable. The first cracks were so small I almost missed them. His phone lighting up at midnight, face down on the nightstand. His hand moving just a little too quickly to silence it. The faint scent of perfume that wasn't mine clinging to his shirt when he came home late. He'd brush it off. A client dinner ran long. I'm working on a big deal. You worry too much. And maybe I wanted to believe him, maybe I wanted to avoid looking too closely because deep down I knew. Women always know before they admit it to themselves. But the confirmation came one night, casual and brutal, like life often delivers its worst truths. It was after a board meeting that had drained every ounce of energy from me. I came home, slipped off my heels, and dropped onto the couch while Jason showered. His phone buzzed on the nightstand. Normally, I respected boundaries. I never felt the need to snoop. But something about the glow of that screen pulled me like gravity. One swipe, one glance, and my world splintered. A message from someone named Angela. I can't stop thinking about last night. My blood ran cold, but it wasn't until I scrolled further that the full weight hit me. Dozens of messages. Hotel confirmations. Photos I can never unsee. I sat there with the phone trembling in my hand, my throat tightening until I couldn't breathe. I didn't confront him. Not then. He came out of the bathroom, towel slung low on his hips, smiling at me like nothing was wrong. And I smiled back. That was the moment I put on my first mask, the moment I realized if I wanted to survive this, I needed time. Anger could wait. Heartbreak could wait. Had to think. But the universe wasn't content with just gutting my personal life. It had bigger plans. Work, the one place I thought untouchable, began to shift beneath my feet. I noticed closed-door meetings I wasn't invited to. Whispers in hallways that stopped when I approached. My name missing from email threads that should have required my input. At first I thought it was paranoia fueled by Jason's betrayal, but then came the meeting. They called me into the boardroom on a Tuesday morning. Richard Winslow sat at the head of the table. His face a perfect mask of corporate regret. To his right was David Holter. And beside him, like a knife twisting deeper into my gut, was Angela. The same Angela from Jason's messages. She wore a navy suit sharp enough to cut glass, her smile thin and cruel as she met my eyes. Richard cleared his throat and delivered the words like a funeral eulogy. The board had voted to remove me from my position. Restructuring. Downsizing. Phrases that mean one thing: you're expendable. I tried to fight, my voice shaking but loud, reminding them that I had saved this company more than once, that without me the financial backbone would snap. But then Angela slid a folder across the table. Inside were doctored spreadsheets, fabricated emails, a trail of fake evidence suggesting I had manipulated numbers, siphoned funds, betrayed everything I stood for. I stared at it, my stomach flipping, my mind screaming that it wasn't real. But perception is reality in corporate America. And Richard only needed a convenient scapegoat. "Claire," he said with a sigh, "I'm sorry. But we can't have corruption in leadership." And just like that, my career, my reputation, my identity were stripped away. I walked out of that building numb, the whispers of my colleagues burning holes in my back. When I got home, Jason was gone too. His closet empty. A note on the counter. "I never wanted to hurt you, but I can't do this anymore. Love her." The days that followed were a blur of whiskey and silence. I didn't eat. I didn't shower. I didn't answer calls from friends who wanted to know what happened. The world spun without me, and I let it. Depression doesn't feel like sadness. It feels like weight, like drowning under invisible cement. I would sit in the dark for hours, the only light the flicker of news reports announcing Holter and Winslow's new direction, with Angela smiling for cameras as the newly appointed CFO. Jason stood beside her at charity galas, their hands intertwined, their victory paraded for the world. I had been replaced in every way. But pain, when it festers long enough, mutates. One night, as I sat staring at the city lights outside my window, the thought came not like a whisper but like a scream. I could destroy them. I knew the company better than anyone. I knew where the bodies were buried. If they thought I would go quietly into obscurity, they had forgotten who I was. Revenge wasn't a choice. It was survival. The plan started small. I combed through the files I had saved before they locked me out. Thousands of emails, reports, confidential memos. It was almost comical how sloppy Angela had been in her theft. She was the embezzler, not me, and her arrogance had blinded her to the inconsistencies. Shell companies, offshore accounts, payments that didn't line up. I smiled for the first time in weeks when I saw it, a smile that tasted of blood. But evidence wasn't enough. I wanted them to feel it. Paranoia. The cracks in the foundation of trust. So I began to haunt them. Anonymous messages slipped into Jason's inbox, vague threats that hinted at secrets. Phone calls at midnight where I said nothing, just breathed. I bumped into them at restaurants, watched their eyes widen as if I were a ghost risen from the grave. Fear makes people sloppy, and Jason was already unraveling. At the same time, I reached out to Lena, an investigative journalist with a reputation for sinking her teeth into corporate scandals. I fed her breadcrumbs, each one leading her deeper into the maze of fraud and deceit. She didn't know my full role, she didn't need to. She just needed the scent of blood. It built slowly like a storm gathering. Jason started drinking more, snapping at Angela in public. Angela began making mistakes in her work, the pressure exposing her flaws. And then came the exposé. Lena's article hit like a bomb. Holter and Winslow accused of massive fraud, CFO under investigation, whistleblower claims ignored. The SEC swooped in. Investors fled. Richard resigned in disgrace. Angela was arrested. Her perfect navy suit traded for handcuffs. Jason's name was dragged through the mud. His real estate empire crumbling overnight. I watched it all from my apartment, the television flickering with images of their downfall. It should have felt like victory, and for a while it did. I laughed, I drank champagne, I whispered to my reflection, "You won." But the nights were still long. The silence still heavy. Revenge had taken everything from them, but it hadn't given anything back to me. Because the truth is, revenge doesn't heal. It doesn't stitch up the wounds or erase the betrayal. It leaves you standing in the ruins of what you've burned, alone, with only the echo of your own rage. I became the fire they lit, and I'll never go out. But peace. That was gone the moment Jason chose her, the moment the board signed my exile. So when people ask me if it was worth it, I smile a smile that doesn't reach my eyes and tell them the truth. Gave me justice. Gave me power. But peace. Peace is a ghost I'll never see again. The weeks after the article broke were a blur of chaos, but not the kind that brings clarity. If anything, the silence that followed their destruction was louder than anything I had ever heard. I thought I would be satisfied watching Jason's smug smile disappear from magazine covers, seeing Angela's hands cuffed as she was led into the back of a black SUV, reading the shaky resignation letter from Richard as the media tore him apart. For a while, I played the victories over in my head like a highlight reel, savoring them as if they were gourmet meals. But satisfaction fades quickly when you're alone in a dark apartment with no one left to witness your triumph. The funny thing about revenge is that it feeds on itself. I thought toppling them would be enough, but then I began to think about everyone else who had turned their backs on me. The colleagues who had whispered behind closed doors instead of standing up for me. The investors who dropped me like I was contagious. Even the friends who didn't return my calls when the scandal hit. I began to wonder, didn't they deserve to pay too? But before I could go further down that path, I had to face something I had been avoiding. Jason. He called me one night. I hadn't spoken to him since the day he left, and hearing his name flash across my phone made my stomach clench. I almost let it go to voicemail, but curiosity, no hunger, made me answer. His voice was different. Not smooth, not confident. It was cracked, desperate. "Claire," he said, his breath heavy. "I need to talk to you." I let the silence drag until he squirmed. "Why?" I asked, finally, my tone flat. "They're saying I knew about the fraud," he blurted. "That I was part of it. But I didn't, you know I didn't." I laughed, the sound sharp. "You think I care what happens to you?" "I made a mistake," he said, voice trembling. "Leaving you, choosing her. I was wrong. Please, help me clear my name. You're the only one who can." For a moment I imagined it, the version of me that still loved him, still believed in redemption, taking pity on him, offering him a lifeline. But that Claire was dead. The woman on the phone was something else entirely. "You already chose your side," I said coldly. "Now you get to live with it." And I hung up, savoring the sound of his silence cut off by mine. But the call stayed with me, echoing in the dark corners of my mind. I told myself I didn't care, but deep down, hearing him broken gave me more satisfaction than even Angela's arrest. Because he had been my undoing before all the rest. And now I was his. Still, I couldn't shake the emptiness. Even victory felt hollow when you had no one to share it with. Nights stretched long and sleepless. I poured myself another glass of wine and stared out at the city lights, wondering if maybe, just maybe, I had lost more than I had gained. And then something unexpected happened. Lena, the journalist, reached out again. She wanted to meet. "There's more," she said cryptically over the phone. We met at a quiet bar, the kind where people whispered instead of shouted. She slid into the booth across from me, her notepad already out. "Claire," she began carefully, "I know you've been feeding me information, but there's something you should see." She pulled out a file, thick with papers. Angela wasn't working alone. There are bigger players involved. Offshore accounts connected to politicians. Corporations laundering money through Holter and Winslow. This goes beyond personal betrayal. This is systemic. Her eyes locked onto mine. "If you want to finish what you started, we can burn down more than just your enemies. We can burn down the whole rotten system." I stared at the file, my pulse quickening. For weeks I had felt the fire inside me dimming, but now it flared again, brighter, hungrier. This wasn't just about Jason or Angela anymore. It was about everyone who had played a part in my downfall. Everyone who thought they could use people like me as pawns in their games. I took the file, my hands steady. Then let's burn it all. But the deeper I went, the more dangerous it became. Names I recognized from government, from the finance world, even from my own social circle. People who had smiled at me at galas, toasted me at dinners, all while lining their pockets with dirty money. Exposing them wouldn't just make headlines. It would make enemies powerful enough to erase me permanently. And for the first time I hesitated. What if I was digging myself into a grave I couldn't climb out of? What if I became so consumed with revenge that I lost whatever fragments of myself were left? The thought should have scared me. Instead, it exhilarated me. Because once you've already lost everything, what's left to fear? The nights grew darker, the stakes higher. I began meeting Lena in secret, passing her documents, strategizing the next moves. But paranoia seeped in. I started noticing cars idling outside my building too long. Strangers in suits who seemed to follow me down the street. Jason called again, his voice slurred with alcohol, begging me to help him, saying people were after him too. I almost believed him. Almost. And then one night, I came home to find my apartment door cracked open. My chest tightened as I pushed it gently, the air inside heavy with silence. My files were scattered, my laptop gone. On the kitchen counter, a single note. Stop, or next time we won't be so polite. I should have been terrified. Instead, I smiled. Because fear meant I was close. Fear meant they knew I was a threat. And I liked being a threat. The story you're hearing now isn't just about a woman betrayed by her lover and her company. It's about what happens when you push someone too far, when you strip them of everything they love, everything they built, and leave them with nothing but rage. They fired their most important employee. They thought they could replace me, erase me. But what they created instead was something they can't control, can't predict, can't kill. I became the shadow in their lives, the ghost in their systems, the fire in their carefully constructed world. And whether I bring it all down or go down with it doesn't matter anymore. 'Cause I've already won. But when you ask me, was it worth it? Did revenge give me peace? I'll tell you again, no. Revenge doesn't heal. Doesn't make you whole. Just makes you powerful in your brokenness. And maybe that's enough. Or maybe it's the most dangerous lie of all. Jason didn't give up after those calls. He started showing up. At first, it was outside my building. His car parked across the street, the headlights cutting through the night as if he were waiting for me to notice him. Then he began approaching me directly. At the coffee shop where I sometimes worked just to feel human again, in the grocery store aisles, once even outside Lena's office. He was thinner, his skin pale, the sharp suit jackets replaced by wrinkled shirts that looked slept in. His eyes were hollow, haunted. The first time he tried to speak to me face to face. His hands were trembling. "Claire, please," he said, reaching for me as if he thought I'd offer him comfort, as if I hadn't watched him pack his bags and walk out of my life like I was nothing. I stepped back, folding my arms. "You've got nerve." His eyes darted around the sidewalk, paranoia dripping off him. "They're watching me," he whispered, voice cracking. "The same people who came after you. Angela, she made promises, Claire. She told me if I backed her, I'd have everything. But now she's gone and I'm exposed. They're going to kill me." I wanted to laugh in his face, to tell him this was what he deserved. But something in his desperation tugged at me. Not compassion, never that, but recognition. He was crumbling under the weight of betrayal, the way I had crumbled. Only difference was, I had rebuilt myself into fire. He was ash. "Maybe you should have thought about that before you chose her," I said coldly, turning away. "Claire, please," he shouted after me, his voice breaking in a way that made strangers on the street turn their heads. But I didn't stop. I let him collapse into the background noise of the city, a ghost already fading. Angela was a different story. I needed to see her. I arranged it through a contact Lena had, a guard at the detention center where Angela was awaiting trial. Money changes hands, favors are called in, and one gray Thursday morning I found myself walking through metal detectors, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, the air heavy with disinfectant and despair. When she was led into the visitation room, shackled at the wrists, her hair pulled back into a tight bun, I almost didn't recognize her. Gone was the sharp navy suit, the perfectly painted lips. She looked smaller, diminished. But her eyes still held that glint, that refusal to bend. She sat across from me, the plexiglass separating us, the phone cold against my ear. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. We just stared, two predators caught in the same cage. Finally she smiled, and even in chains it was venomous. "I should have known you wouldn't stay buried. I should have known you'd be arrogant enough to think you could take me down and get away with it. I replied evenly. She leaned closer, her voice dropping to a hiss. You think you won. You think this is over. There are bigger players than me, Claire. I was a pawn. They'll come for you next. The certainty in her tone chilled me. For a split second, I saw past her bravado to the truth. Angela wasn't afraid of me. She was afraid of them. Whoever they were. Maybe, I said, my voice calm though my pulse hammered. But at least when they come, I won't be alone. You'll be rotting here, forgotten. She smirked, and for the first time since I walked in, I realized Angela wasn't broken. Not really. She was biding her time. And that scared me more than her betrayal ever had. When I left, the guard glanced at me curiously. She get to you? He asked. I didn't answer. Couldn't. 'Cause the truth was, yes, she had. Paranoia grew. Cars still lingered outside my building. I started checking my locks 3, 4, 5 times before bed. Lena warned me that digging deeper into the offshore accounts could make me a target, that powerful men didn't play games when their fortunes were threatened. But I couldn't stop. I had crossed the line long ago, and going back wasn't an option. Then came the night Jason showed up at my door. It was raining, the city drowned in sheets of water, and I was sitting at my desk surrounded by files when the pounding started. Relentless, desperate. I opened the door to find him standing there, soaked to the bone. His hair plastered to his forehead. His eyes wild. They're after me, he shouted, pushing past me into the apartment. I have nowhere else to go. Get out, I snapped, my voice sharp, but he was already pacing, his hands clawing at his hair. You don't understand, he cried. They killed Martin, Angela's old accountant. They're cleaning house. Next. Please, Claire, please, I need you. I need us. That word, us, made something inside me snap. I grabbed his arm, spun him to face me. There is no us, Jason. You left me for her. You helped them destroy me. And now you want me to save you. His eyes filled with tears, his lips trembling. I made a mistake. I was weak. But you're strong. You always were. Please, just help me. For a moment I almost felt pity. Almost. But then I remembered the note on the counter. Love her. The look on his face as he walked away. The smug smile in those photographs. And the pity curdled into rage. I'll help you, I said softly, and his face lit up with hope. I'll help you by making sure you disappear like you should have years ago. His smile faltered. Claire. But I didn't let him finish. I opened the door, pointed to the rain. Get out. Don't come back. He begged. He cried. He even dropped to his knees. But I stood there, stone, until finally he stumbled into the storm, swallowed by the night. That was the last time I saw him. Days later, I read a small piece in the paper about a man found dead in his car, an apparent overdose. They didn't even mention his name in the headline. Jason had vanished from the world as easily as he had vanished from me. And strangely I felt nothing. By then, the investigation had grown into something massive. Lena's articles were no longer just about Holter and Winslow. They were about senators, CEOs, billionaires laundering their sins through shell accounts. My files had lit the match, and now the fire was spreading uncontrollably. Subpoenas were issued. Bank accounts frozen. Resignations rippled through industries like shockwaves. I should have felt triumphant. I should have felt powerful. But instead I felt hollow. One night, as I walked home from another meeting with Lena, a car slowed beside me. The window rolled down, and a man's voice called out softly, almost kindly. Claire, you should stop. For your own good. Then the car pulled away, disappearing into traffic. I stood there, the city spinning around me, and realized Angela had been right. I wasn't fighting Jason or Angela anymore. I wasn't even fighting Richard. I was fighting a machine too big to destroy, too ruthless to fear one woman. And for the first time I wondered if maybe I had gone too far. But then I remembered that night in the boardroom, the smug look on Angela's face, the way Jason's note cut into me, and I felt the fire rise again. Maybe I couldn't win, but I could still make them bleed. So here I am, telling you this story not as a warning or a confession, but as a reckoning. They fired their most important employee. They thought they had buried me, replaced me, erased me. But when you bury someone alive, sometimes they claw their way back, and when they do, they're not who they used to be. I am not the woman I was. I am the fire they created, and I will burn until there is nothing left to consume. But if you ask me, did revenge give me peace? I'll tell you the truth one last time. Peace was gone the moment the knife went in. Revenge didn't bring it back. Never does. All it gave me was this: the knowledge that they suffered as I suffered, that they lost as I lost. And maybe that's enough. Or maybe it's the cruelest lie of all, that justice can ever replace love, that destruction can ever replace healing. I don't know anymore. All I know is this: they never saw me coming. And they never will again.